Wolf, joined by a quorum of the committee. And for the agenda, we begin with the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. And Chair Cedarberg has said that that would be read quarterly, and she read it the last time, so I'll just bring attention to it. It's at the beginning of the agenda, and we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes that anybody wants to make to the agenda? Then we will consider the agenda approved, which brings us to the approval of the June 10th, 2025 Environment Committee minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any changes or corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Next, we have the consent business, which is one item. Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we have a consent agenda approved. Okay, non-consent business, we have one thing, yay. So silent G is up for adoption of the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services wastewater rates and charges.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Environment Committee. My name is Matt Sahlmeyer, nicknamed Silent G, as you mentioned. Thank you. And I'm here to present business item 2025-157, the adoption of Environmental Services 2026 wastewater rates and charges. And if this motion is adopted by the Environment Committee today, it will go to the Council on July 23rd for final adoption. So the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council adopt the wastewater rates and charges outlined in business item 2025-157 to be effective January 1st, 2026. And today I'll go over our rate setting schedule and talk about the customer meetings we had. I'll also give you a high-level summary of our budget, our debt, how our rates compare nationally, and discuss both SAC and industrial rates. As a spoiler, the budget is the same as it was on May 13th when we last came in here. Nothing has changed, which I think means we did a good job with our initial budget rollout. So the numbers will look familiar. And to go over our rate setting schedule as a quick recap, we always start with our industrial workshops in May, which we had 46 attendees at our new services building at Metro Plant. So that was pretty exciting to be in that new location this year. We also had 42 people attend the virtual workshops. So we had good attendance overall for the industrial waste forums. I then came to the Environment Committee on May 13th and shared a preview of our budget workshops. We then went out on May 22nd and June 5th and held our municipal customer forums, which I'll cover in more detail in the upcoming slides. And today I'm coming back to share feedback from those sessions and seek your adoption of our rates and charges. And as I mentioned previously, this is scheduled to go to the Council for approval in 2 weeks on July 23rd. And then the preliminary operating budget will be adopted at the end of August. So we held our in-person meeting in Fridley at Moore Lake Park, and I want to thank you, Councilmember Wolf, for helping us kick off that meeting with some opening remarks. At the meeting, we had some good questions about the private inflow and infiltration grant program, our SAC program, as well as some specific flow-related questions. We only had 8 people attend, but they asked quite a few questions, and staff stayed after the meeting and they were able to meet one-on-one with a lot of people, so I think that was really helpful. And then we had our virtual meeting on June 5th, which Councilmember Lindstrom helped kick off, so thank you to, even though Councilmember Lindstrom's not here, thank you to Councilmember Lindstrom for that. And the virtual meeting had 42 people attend, so I think it's probably pretty clear that people are still preferring the virtual attendance, so we will continue to have that as an option going forward. So these next few slides are sort of the refresher on our overall budget and financial position. And I would like to point out that this slide does have a typo, so that should say proposed uses versus 2025. We'll fix that up and make note of that in any notes relevant to this meeting today or related to this meeting today. So to start, we're proposing a wastewater charge increase of 5.8%, with sources going up 6.9%. Our revenue sources are going up a little more than our municipal wastewater charges because we have a $12 million pass-through grant, an activity for 2026 for the inflow and infiltration grant program. That's also going to impact the expense side, which is going up 6.9%. And that's, again, also impacted by that inflow and infiltration grant program. We also have no increases to our SAC fees, and that's for the 11th year in a row, and that's given our healthy SAC reserves, so things are good there. I'll go over that in more detail. And then the industrial strength charges are a bit higher than the municipal wastewater charge, and that's because the industrial waste fees are based on costs of the treatment plant, excluding interceptors and other things that are not related to strength, maybe things like water supply of that nature. And that's because when you treat industrial waste, the additional cost isn't felt in those other areas, and like the pipe, it's felt at the plant. So, and then lastly, permit fees are pegged closely to the municipal wastewater charge at 5.8%. Again, similar numbers to what was previously shared. And there's no changes in our revenue since our last meeting, but I'll just go over sort of the pie of how our revenue comes in again quickly. So our biggest piece is our municipal wastewater charges, then our transfer from SAC, followed by our industrial waste charges. This year, we did break out the grants just because that $12 million I&I grant is bigger than what we don't have that every year, so it's broken out here, and it'll be broken out in the expense piece. And then we have other, which is things like using a little bit of reserves for rate mitigation and things like investment earnings. Use is $405.5 million, same as sources, so it's a break-even budget. The pie looks similar to how it does most years. Debt service is our biggest expense. That's paying for all of our long-term debt to help fund our capital program. Then is salaries, our people that we're paying for, and benefits, followed by several categories that are pretty evenly keeled, such as materials and supplies and chemicals. Interdivisional, that's the central office, paying for things like information services, our utilities, contracts. And then you will see we have 3% for PAYGO, and then the grants is broken out at 3% here again, because that's pass-through in nature for the I&I grants. So we currently have around $1.3 billion in debt that you can see here on our wastewater outstanding debt. We do expect it'll ramp up in a few years as we do some bigger projects for our capital program. I think it's a pretty reasonable number if you consider that we have a $9 billion present value for our system. So to have $1.3 billion is pretty reasonable considering that larger number for the value of the overall system. And treating wastewater is fairly capital intense when you add all the pipes and treatment plants. So we're going to have and continue to need to have some debt to help pay for that. And since one positive thing that's new to share today is that since we last met, we finalized our 2025 bond sale worth $75 million. We continue to have a AAA rating, which is the best you can get, so that's fantastic. And the rate is 3.8%, which is a little bit higher than what we've seen the last couple of years, but interest rates are higher, and if you consider how high interest rates are on other things like mortgages, 3.8% is still a fantastic rate for us on our debt. So good news there. And then our projected debt service in 2018 through 2021, we had a debt bubble driven by refinancing during the last recession. We're past that now. We've been experiencing relatively flat debt service for the last several years. And then in 2026, we're paying off some older, higher interest debt, so we'll see debt service drop some. But then it's going to rise up again based on our upcoming capital program, which includes several projects such as the 4th incinerator at Metro, the new Rogers plant, and work on our interceptor system. I like to call this the bragging slide because we do have something to brag about. Our rates are very competitive, 35% better than the national average. This is comparing our organization, Environmental Services, to other peer agencies that treat over 100 million gallons daily, and this is based on the latest NACWA survey. So always love to throw this in here because we do think it's really good news. SAC units, this just shows that our SAC rate increases. This is our SAC's been at $2,485 per residential equivalent, which a residential equivalent is 274 gallons per day. And this is based on the maximum potential that would come out of a household or business that we set and establish our SAC rates. We have a SAC determination team that does that. And SAC rates have not increased over the last 11 years, and that's because our growth has been strong over the last 5 to 10 years in new SAC units, and because the SAC reserve is at a healthy level. And then looking at our SAC units, so we dropped to 17,000 units in 2024, but we've had much lower years if you look back further. And we plan for around 18,000 to 19,000 SAC units a year, so we're not in bad condition. It's just a little bit less, and it could potentially go up this year if interest rates were to drop and development was to increase. But what we're seeing right now is very similar to what we saw in 2024. So I just looked at it today for through May of 2025. I shouldn't take all the credit. Jesse and I our SAC manager sent me the data, and we're pretty consistent with where we were a year ago. So I would expect if all things hold flat, we'll be close to that 17,000 units, which is a little bit less than we planned for, but it's not way off.
Go back to that slide for a second. I want to give you guys some perspective on what things were like in 2009 when we didn't think that it would ever get up to 17,000 again. So we've had some really blockbuster years, and now we're kind of back down to normal. So it feels like it's low, but that's still a very, very healthy construction market.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. I definitely agree with you. Appreciate that input. And I think at that I'm on to the next slide. So the SAC reserve balance, we're very healthy. We're over $100 million, which is more than double our minimum balance. The overall reserve's been dropping, but part of the reason is the SAC units. The other has been planned use of our SAC transfer to fund PAYGO. It helps with our rate mitigation. And we've been drawing on these reserves a bit since they are healthy, but we're planning to decrease that draw over time. So in 2025, we plan to use $5 million of the SAC transfer to help fund PAYGO. In 2026, we're only planning to use $3 million. The reason we're doing that is because you want to save that reserve for a rainy day. If we hit another recession, it's good to be at a healthy level with your reserves. So we're trying to be mindful and watch that and manage it as well as we can. So now, I'd like to spend a little bit more time maybe on this slide and just, we had our meetings, we've shared our budget. I want to share some of the feedback that we had. So we did have attendance from 30 communities, 50 attendees in total. We did not hear much feedback at the online webinar. So even though there were more people there, the questions that we had were mostly logistical, people wanting to know where they can find resources. A lot of times they're using those resources to go to their city councils and help them tell the story of their wastewater rates. So those were mostly logistical. The in-person meeting had fewer attendees, but we received a lot of feedback. People wanted to know things about our private property inflow and infiltration grant program. PFAS efforts came up. I also wanted to go over, there were some SAC-specific questions, and they were curious about future wastewater charge increases. And as I mentioned, staff met with individuals one-on-one after the meeting and addressed those questions, and I think we were able to answer them, and I think we're also given some things to help us think about as we are moving forward with future budgets. Things like, for example, we set our when we charge communities our wastewater rates, it's based on flows so 2026 is going to be based on flow data from 2024. We've done that for a while. Maybe we should look at that again and think about if we should do it based on an average over a number of years so there's less volatility. I don't know if we would make that change, but it was something that came up from one community. If the rates are a little bit higher, they think, what could we do to flatten it out over time? Ultimately, the way we do it is based on the latest task force that we've had. So it is, and even communities that come and say, my rates look high this year, those are communities that several years ago agreed to wanting to do the current process we have. But it's hard sometimes when you have a higher rate year. And so we had some good discussion around how we do things and should we reconsider how we do things going forward? Not that there's any immediate changes. We're just thinking about things, and that's good that we're having those conversations with our customers and listening to them. So I think that was a really effective outcome of the meeting. And then the other thing that is in a similar court to that is we have been talking to individuals who want to understand their city-specific rate increases, and a lot of times it has to do with flow. So we have been meeting with communities that have more flow in recent years, and they want to understand what's going on with their flow, how's that impacting their rates. So I know Kyle is back there, Sam's back there. We've been having a lot of conversations with communities to talk about their recent flows and just help them understand and try to help them in any way that we can so that they can have those good conversations with their city councils. So overall, I think it was another successful year of customer engagement. And there will be a point after this for questions, certainly, but the proposed action, once again, is that the Metropolitan Council adopt the wastewater rates and charges outlined in business item 2025-157 to be effective January 1st, 2026. And I will stand for questions that you might have.
Questions?
I know I've asked this question in transportation. I can't remember if I've asked it with this committee or not. Do you anticipate in the budget the impact of tariffs for particularly the materials and equipment side of, but there may be other factors there that I'm not aware of. Just curious about.
Certainly. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I address you all correctly. Chair Wolf, Councilmember Vento, we have certainly been looking at and thinking about tariffs. I think a lot of our larger expense items are not going to be impacted, have an immediate impact by the tariffs. So if you think about our biggest expenses, our debt service. And that's a combination of 20 years of debt with interest rates that have ranged over a 20-year period. So it would take several years of higher interest rates for that to start seeing impact. After that, it's our salaries and benefits as our next largest increase. I think we've seen some larger increases to catch up to inflation in the salaries and benefits over the last few years. I don't think there's going to be a 25% increase in salaries and benefits next year because there's tariffs. So our largest items are probably not going to have the majority impact from the tariffs. Some other smaller pieces could, maybe in contract services. And we are trying to use any real-time data we have with our vendors, but I don't think we have any major risk that I'm seeing in 2026 at this point for tariffs. That's not included in the budget, sorry.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Great presentation as always. We do have a proposed action that the Metropolitan Council adopt the wastewater rates and charges outlined in business item 2025-157 to be effective January 1st, 2026. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes.
Thank you.
And just like that, we're done with all of our agenda items. Chair report, it is Sue Vento's last meeting, and I am so sad. I understand why you need to move on, but you have been an absolute joy to work with. You are smart, you do your homework, and you definitely have had the best interests of the region in your thoughts in everything that you do. So it has been so fun to work with you, and it's going to be really sad that you're not here with us anymore. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I was on this committee my first 4 years, and then we went through reorganizing committees, and I wasn't for a couple of years, but I got to come back for a few months, and I've loved being back on the committee. The new District 12 council member who will be sworn in tomorrow night and henceforth sworn at afterwards is here tonight, Mark Jenkins, and you will thoroughly enjoy working with him. He brings expertise on a lot of issues, including PFAS. So Mark will hit the ground running, and you will enjoy working with him. I also want to just do a shout out to the staff. You guys have always been so responsive, and what I really love is how much you connect with the communities and keep them involved and informed, and how much you engage us in those contacts. It's good to be there to help be a part of the conversations and to know what's going on, and to be able to answer some questions from a council member perspective, but to learn from the staff who teach us so much. So kudos to the staff and to the leader of the staff, Lisa. You've got a great team.
Go ahead.
So I have a few comments to say too. We really appreciate your support and enthusiasm. In fact, it's really helped us see new ways of doing things. You've asked really good questions, but you've been also a great cheerleader in our journey of change. So we really want to honor you and show our gratitude with our symbol of
Is it a jar of water?
adapting today so we have clean water in the future.
Ooh.
And you're getting... Because we know that Pearson's adapted to the depression.
Oh,
and
I love
Robin is
it. I love
adapted.
it. Thank you. Oh, dear.
We're gonna miss you.
I've got 10 nieces, great nieces and nephews who will go, no, 8. How many? No, there are 10. I have to stop and think. You're going to go nuts over this. Well, nuts.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is great.
I thought maybe you were gonna need some insulin with that, but if you have all the
Share it.
nieces and nephews to eat it for you, that will be.
We can start today.
Councilmember Lee, did you want to say
It's
something?
pretty ominous.
No, I guess we can't start today. I thought they were individual. Oh, this is great.
A large cleaver will be needed.
Thanks, Chair. I also want to say my thanks and gratitude to Susan. I became chair of the audit committee a couple of years ago, and Sue is my vice chair, and she stepped in when I couldn't be there. So I appreciate her friendship and her professionalism, and most of all, we're going to miss her sense of humor. After many years as a school teacher, she decided to continue to serve the public with these last 6 years of public service to the state of Minnesota and to our region. So I want to say thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything?
Well,
Then all we have left is the general manager's report. Did you have anything besides the big candy bar?
I have 2 things that won't compete with a big candy bar, but one is pretty cool. We got some more money from the legislature recently, $15 million again for our I&I program, which you all know is really important to invest in this. Will help us not have to build larger facilities and larger pipes. So it's a really good program. And one of the things that we have to also implement as we grant these program money out is there's some new affordability criteria that the state wants us to follow. So we're going to be reaching out to the communities that this will affect and talk through how to proceed, because they will basically get 100% of the I&I funding for if they meet the affordability criteria, which is a pretty big deal for these communities. So we're really happy about that. And secondarily, some recent breaking news is an individual was rescued from a St. Paul sewer that happens to be an old abandoned part of our system that we have a project in the works to be able to remove. And we had it secured with several Jersey barriers, and they happened to move the Jersey barriers and access the structure, and then they couldn't get back out. So they were in there, according to the news, about 4 days, and a firefighter rescued them.
It's Friday.
We were aware this spring that there's a lot more social media promoting this idea of underground access to cavernous caves. And so we've been doing things to harden our facilities to make it harder for folks to encroach on those, because there are some real dangers and risks, not only to our facilities in terms of their operability, but we don't want anybody to endanger their life, and we want to take measures to prevent that.
That must have been some work to move a Jersey barrier. Those things are not light.
I think it takes at least 3 people to move those, from what I've been told. I've never attempted.
Wow.
But we don't know, of course, maybe somebody else had moved it, been in and out, and this person came along and followed suit. But we have to take measures to prevent those things from happening in the future. So there will be more news reported. I know that Terry's working now to gather information for, I think, St. Paul Pioneer Press.
Well, thank you. The language for the grants, can you email that out to us so that we know what it
Absolutely.
is? Because I'd be interested to know
We'll
what the
include it in-
details of that are.
We'll include it in our Environment Committee materials.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We want to see that.
So with no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.
4:24.